I didn't even get to sit down before it was over. The cafe was crowded, soft jazz floating from the speakers, the air heavy with espresso and sugar. I had barely taken 2 steps toward the table when Jason looked up from his untouched cappuccino and said, "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. His voice sounded flat, almost rehearsed. I sat anyway, my palms already damp. "What's going on?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Is this about the caterer?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and set a small velvet box on the table. Not to give it to me, but to take something back. "I can't marry you, Emily," he said that 7 words. They cut through me sharper than any scalpel I had ever held. "What?" I whispered. Jason leaned back in his chair, like telling the truth. "Had set him free. It's not you. We're just headed in different directions. I've made connections, important ones. Megan Langley and I are aligned in ways I didn't see before." Megan Langley, daughter of Gregory Langley, the venture capitalist who practically owns half the West. Coast's tech startups. My heart pounded. "You're leaving me for her?" "It's not like that," he said, though it clearly was. "This is better. For both of us, you deserve someone simpler." He didn't even flinch as I stared at him, stunned and silent, trying to comprehend how the man I was supposed to marry in 16 days could erase me so easily. Then, as if he hadn't already gutted, he added, "Also the ring. It's a family heirloom. My grandmother would be devastated if it left the family." My hands trembled as I slipped it off. I set it gently on the table. "Thank you for your honesty," I said. Then I stood and walked away, past the glass. Doors, past the couple sharing desserts, past the curious eyes wondering what they had just witnessed. I didn't cry until I turned the corner onto Elm Street. I didn't go back to the apartment we shared. I couldn't face the half-packed boxes, the silence, the dress still hanging in the closet. But when I finally got there, it was already done. My things were stacked by the door in labeled suitcases. Clothes, books, toiletries, all neatly sorted as if I were being returned to sender. Not by Jason. He wouldn't have been that thoughtful. This had his mother's fingerprints all over it. I sat on the floor, beside those bags for what felt like hours. My old studio lease was gone. I'd given it to a nursing student weeks ago. Every cent I had saved had gone into that wedding. I had less than $100 in my account in a full week. Until payday. That's when I did something I hadn't done in over a year. Called my foster mom. Margaret Temple answered on the 3rd ring, her voice warm and steady like always. "Emily." "Honey, where have you been?" "I was just about to call you about those shoes we looked at last week." I couldn't even speak. A sob tore out of me instead. That was all it took. An hour later, I was curled up on her faded plaid couch, cradling a mug of peppermint tea. Well, she smoothed my hair just like she used to when I was 13 and broken after another placement had gone wrong. Margaret didn't ask questions. She just draped a thick knit blanket over my legs and said softly, "Stay as long as you need, you hear me? I've got space and you've got nothing to prove." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the old pull-out bed in her living room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of that conversation with Jason. His calmness, the way he didn't even hesitate, haunted me. Had he ever really loved me? Or had I just been a placeholder, waiting until someone with a last name like Langley came along? By sunrise, the heartbreak had cooled into something heavier, shame. I was supposed to be stepping into a new life, a new chapter, a family of my own. Instead, I was back at square one. 20-8 years old, heartbroken, homeless, humiliated. At noon, I showered, dressed, and went back to the hospital as if nothing had happened. The nurses smiled at me. A few asked about the wedding plans. I smiled back, nodded, lied, because telling the truth felt like it would rip me open all over again. But as I pulled on my scrubs and scanned my patient assignments, I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't stay here forever. Not in this town. Not with these memories. Not while Jason Miller and Megan Langley were clinking champagne glasses to their perfect, aligned future just across the state line. Not when I had nowhere to go and nothing left to lose. 3 days passed, 3 long, aching days of forcing myself through the motions on the hospital floor, holding myself together by a thread. I smiled when people asked about the wedding. I said it had been postponed. I said Jason had a last-minute business trip. I said I was fine. I said too much. On the third day, while checking in a patient in room 8, Rachel, our blunt, no-nonsense charge nurse, stuck her head in. "You still looking for a miracle escape from this place?" she asked. I blinked. "What?" She motioned me into the hallway and lowered her voice. "Remember Lily from Neuro? She took a private care job last month. Live-in, high pay, but she quit last week. Couldn't handle the guy." "What guy?" I asked. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Some rich tech mogul. Paralyzed. Lives up in Cypress Hill in one of those houses nobody normal would ever build. Apparently he's a nightmare, but it pays triple what we make here. Live-in suite, meals included, no roommates. No night shifts, just one patient." I hesitated. "I'm not a caregiver." "You're a nurse with 5 years of experience." She shot back. "You're more qualified than half the people they've hired. And honestly, this guy scares most of them off in under 2 weeks. You're stubborn. That might actually work in your favor." I almost laughed. I wasn't sure what part of me still counted as stubborn. Everything inside me felt cracked, but something in her voice, that word, escape, it echoed in me. "Do you have a contact?" I asked. 10 minutes later, she handed me a small card with a name written in elegant, sharp cursive: Margaret Temple, estate manager, with a number beneath it. It took me until midnight to dial. I stood in the back alley of Margaret's house, in my coat, breathing in the cold Montana air, phone shaking in my hand. She answered on the second ring. "Yes." "This is Emily Carter. I was told there's a position for a live-in nurse." A pause. Then, "Are you available for an interview tomorrow morning at 9? "Yes," I said quickly. "Bring your credentials and references. The address will be texted shortly. Do not be late." The line went dead at 4:30 a.m. I boarded the earliest flight out of Helena, connected through San Francisco, and rode a regional shuttle that climbed the hills of Cypress until it felt like we'd left the real world behind. Everything felt dreamlike, unearned, like I was trespassing into someone else's life. And then I saw the house. It looked like a modern fortress, all glass, steel, and sharp angles carved into the cliffside, as if someone had built a mansion out of sunlight and stone. The long black gate swung open as my cab approached, and for a moment I wanted to tell the driver to turn around, but it was too late. Margaret Temple met me at the front door. She was a woman in her 60s, lean as wire, her silver hair pulled into a tight twist, her navy suit without a single wrinkle. She looked me over with the precision of someone who had spent her life running either a hospital ward or a military base. "You're early," she said. I didn't want to be late. "Good. Follow me." The interview was brisk. She skimmed my resume, asked 4 direct questions, didn't smile once, and finally said, "The position is yours, Miss Carter. The terms are simple: round-the-clock availability. 2 days off per month, no visitors. Medical knowledge is essential. Discretion is non-negotiable. Your patient is a complicated man. You'll be living on the 2nd floor, adjacent to his suite. Meals and lodging are included. Salary is $12,000 a month, plus a performance bonus depending on his progress." I tried not to react, but I still remember gripping the arms of my chair to keep from laughing out loud. It was more than triple what I made at the hospital. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything but an overstuffed duffel bag and a bleeding heart. But I said yes. I said it without hesitating. Margaret slid a folder across the table. This is your contract. Review it before tomorrow. Your patient is Mr. Ryan Hale. The name meant nothing to me then. It would soon mean everything. The next morning, I stood outside his door, folder in hand, heart pounding against my ribs. The hallway was silent, muted by the kind of plush carpet that swallowed footsteps. Everything about this house felt expensive and cold. Stone floors, sleek lines, the kind of silence that hummed with money. Margaret stood beside me, clipboard pressed to her chest. You're sure you want this? She asked, still not looking at me. I signed the contract, I said. That's not what I asked. I swallowed hard. Yes. She knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a reply. The room was massive, more cathedral than bedroom, vaulted ceilings, glass, walls framing a forest of redwoods, sunlight spilling across pale hardwood floors. It felt less like a living space and more like a throne room built for a ghost. He was by the window in a sleek black wheelchair, his back to us. Mr. Hale, Margaret said crisply. Your new nurse has arrived. Emily Carter. He didn't turn right away, just sat there, fingers slowly drumming against the armrest. Then finally he pivoted, and my breath caught. I don't know what I'd been expecting. Maybe an older man, someone frail, but Ryan Hale was young. Early to mid-30s, tall, even-seated. Dark, close-cropped hair, sharp jawline, eyes like shards of glass. And yet there was something hollow in him, a kind of exhaustion that clung to his pale skin and lean frame. But it was his expression that warned me. He looked at me like I was already a disappointment. So, he said, voice low and biting, they sent me another one. I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut me off. What's the bet this time? Margaret, a week, 10 days. Margaret didn't answer. She just said, I'll leave you two to get acquainted. Then she shut the door behind her. Silence stretched between us. I'm not here to place bets, I said finally. Just to do my job. He rolled his chair closer, studying me like I was a piece of art he didn't particularly like. And what job do you think that is? Medication, physical therapy, monitoring vitals, supporting your rehabilitation. He gave a dry, humorless snort. You forgot the part where you nod sympathetically while I fail to walk again. That's usually everyone's favorite part. I didn't flinch. I'm not here to pity you. He tilted his head slightly. Oh, that's new. Most of them. Crack by day 3. Maybe I'll surprise you. Maybe, he said, though the smirk that pulled at his mouth made it clear he didn't believe me. The rest of the day passed in stiff, uneasy silence. I administered his medication, reviewed his therapy plan, took notes. Ryan kept tossing barbed remarks, testing me, pushing to see where I'd break, but I didn't. I'd worked with veterans who had lost limbs, teenagers who screamed through every injection, mothers who sobbed through morphine haze. Ryan Hale was not going to scare me. That evening, as I prepped his room for the night, he spoke suddenly. You're not what I expected. I glanced up from the drawer. No? You haven't asked about the accident. I figured you'd tell me if you wanted to. A pause. Then another surprise. It was a ski trip, he said at last. Solo. I lost control on a ridge. Woke up in a helicopter. Haven't stood unaided since. I nodded. Thank you for telling me. He stared at me for a long time. Why did you take this job? I needed it, not the money. Why this job? I met his eyes. Because I've been lied to. Because I know what it feels like to be thrown away. For just a moment, something. And his expression cracked, like a wall with a hairline fracture. Then he turned back toward the window. Don't get attached, he said. I don't do gratitude, and I don't do friendship. Good, I replied. I don't do illusions. He didn't answer, but he didn't send me away either. It happened on the fifth night. I wasn't supposed to be awake, but the wind had been howling since midnight, rattling the windows like some restless ghost trying to choose whether to come inside or stay out. I got up to close the blinds and noticed the light still on in the West Wing gym. Ryan rarely went in there and almost never alone. At first, I told myself to ignore it. He probably fell asleep watching TV, but something in me wouldn't let it go. Something quiet, instinctive. I slipped on a sweater, patted down the silent hall, and eased the gym door open just enough to peek inside. And then I froze. Ryan Hale was standing. Not fully, not unaided, but standing. His hands clutched the parallel bars, arms taut, sweat beading on his temple. His legs trembled, every muscle fighting to stay upright. And then, slowly, painfully, he took a step, and then another. My breath caught. He didn't notice me at first. He was too focused. But the soft creak of the door gave me away. He turned, his face shifting instantly from raw effort to pure rage. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped. I heard something. I thought, "Get out, Emily, now." But I didn't move. Couldn't move. Because something in me had already changed. He wasn't hopeless. He wasn't done. He was hiding progress. "Why?" I asked softly. "Why are you keeping this a secret?" His hands tightened on the bars, knuckles white. "Because the minute people see progress, they expect miracles. And that's not how healing works." He laughed bitterly. "No, but it is how disappointment works. I've already watched people leave once they realized I'm going to just stand up and be who I used to be. I won't go through that again. So instead, you pretend you've given up." His jaw tightened. "You don't get it." I stepped closer, careful, like approaching a wounded animal. Maybe I do. His eyes locked on mine, angry, uncertain. "I'm not going to tell anyone," I said. "But if you let me help you, really help you, we could work towards something better. You don't have to do this alone." "Why?" he demanded. "Why do you even care?" "Because I know what it's like to have your future ripped away and still be expected to smile through the pieces." He stared at me, breathing hard, sweat glistening on his skin. For a second, I thought he'd yell again, order me out, threaten to fire me. Instead, he sank slowly back into the chair, silent, exhausted. Finally, he muttered, "Fine." My heart skipped. "We keep this between us," he added. "No one knows. I understand." "And you follow my lead. I say stop, we stop. I say go, you help. That's it." Agreed. He studied me, his eyes still sharp, but something had shifted. "You're not like the others," he said quietly. I shrugged. "I'm not trying to be." We started sessions the next morning. Early quiet, before Margaret stirred. Before the sun had fully warmed the kitchen tiles. Each step he took was agony, controlled, measured like fighting gravity with nothing but stubbornness and muscle memory. But he did it. And I was there. Not to cheer, not to pity, just to steady him when he needed it. It was later that week when I first heard the voice. I was organizing the meds cabinet in my room when it carried down the hall, deep, smooth, too casual to be staff. I followed it into the west sitting room and found him. There, a man in his early 40s, lounging on the leather couch, an expensive watch flashing in the sunlight, a drink in his hand. "Ryan, you look like hell," the man said with a laugh. Across from him, Ryan gave a thin smile. "Good to see you too, Eric." That was my introduction to Eric Thorne, Ryan's longtime business partner, the man who, according to Margaret, had stepped up to run Hale Nexus Technologies after Ryan's accident. Something about him made my skin prickle. Maybe it was the way he looked at Ryan, as if still weighing his worth. Or maybe it was how his gaze slid over me when I walked in with the tea tray, slow, assessing, invasive. "This the new one?" he asked. "Emily Carter," I said evenly, setting the tray down. "Any better than the last three?" Eric smirked. "She's not here to entertain you," Ryan cut in sharply. "She's my nurse." Their conversation turned to business, mergers, investors, government contracts. I tried to stay invisible, but one word froze me. Langley. Eric leaned closer, voice dropping. "Lavra says her father's ready to push the funds through. We just need the control package transferred to the shell. Langley Capital will absorb it. He's got friends on the tech board. Easy in." Ryan didn't respond. He just stared out the window, knuckles tight against the armrest. "I've already prepped the docs," Eric continued. "We just need your signature later. I'll look them over," Ryan said flatly. "You've been saying that for weeks," Eric pressed. "If we wait much longer, the opportunity closes." Ryan didn't answer. My pulse hammered in my ears. I slipped out of the room before either of them noticed. I was still standing there. Langley. Lavra Langley. That name still haunted me. And then it clicked. Langley Capital. Lavra. Eric's push for Ryan's signature. The company. They were trying to take it, strip control, while Ryan was still recovering. And if Lavra was involved, Megan Langley couldn't be far behind. My chest tightened as I shut the door to my room. Was this connected to what happened to me? Was I just collateral damage in something much bigger? Or had they chosen me on purpose, the girl no one would ever suspect? That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. While helping Ryan with his stretching exercises, I broke the silence. "There's something I overheard today about your company." He didn't look at me. "Go on," I told him everything. Word for word, names, phrases, the exact tone they used. When I said Megan Langley's name, he froze. "You know her?" "My ex-fiance left me for her," I said flatly. He blinked slowly. "Jason Miller." I nodded. "You know him?" "No," Ryan said, "but I've heard the name, through Eric." He rolled away from the wall and stared at me. "Are you suggesting my business partner and your ex are—" "What? In on something together?" "I'm suggesting it's too much of a coincidence." He didn't respond for a long moment. Finally, he said quietly, "I'll review the documents." That was it. I tried not to feel crushed. I'd hoped for more belief, action, something, but instead Ryan shut down again, retreating into silence like everything I'd just said had been swallowed by a void. That night, I paced my room like an animal in a cage. Was I wrong? Was I seeing ghosts? Or worse, was I right and no one would believe me? The next morning, he knocked on my door. Ryan never knocked. When I opened it, he sat in his chair, a folder in his lap. "You were right," he said. "Langley Capital isn't just investing. The paperwork transfers decision-making rights and ownership to a holding company Eric formed 2 months ago. Buried under layers, my breath caught. I want you to help me stop them." He handed me the folder. "Are you sure?" I asked softly. "After everything?" Ryan nodded. "If they think I'm too weak to fight, then they've forgotten who I was before I broke." The plan took days to finalize. Every night, after the house fell silent, Ryan and I sat across from each other at the long oak table in the study, poring over documents and strategy notes. His hands sometimes shook from exhaustion, but his voice stayed steady. Piece by piece, he was building a war room, and I was his only ally inside. The walls. He'd already contacted his attorney. They were tracing everything, emails, contracts, bank trails. Ryan had nothing from me, not even his doubts. "I trusted Eric more than anyone," he admitted one night. "He was there when I pitched my first app. I let him speak for me when I couldn't walk. And all this time, you were right to trust your gut," I told him. "I was late to do it," he said quietly. "But I won't be late again." 1 week later, a special board meeting was called. No one suspected a thing. Ryan let Eric believe. The signature was coming. He even thanked him in an email for handling things so well. That same afternoon, he suited up. It was the first time I'd seen him in a full tailored suit, midnight blue. Sharp lines, every detail perfect. He looked powerful, striking. His body was still weak, but the way he moved, proud, upright, changed the air in the room. He practiced walking to the conference table with a cane, 10 steps, then 15, then 20. I want them to see it, he said, with their own eyes. The day of the meeting, we arrived 15 minutes early. The building was all glass and chrome and unnerving silence. Heads turned as we entered. Ryan walked beside me, jaw set, steps slow but sure. Shock rippled through the boardroom like an electric. Current. Eric sat at the head of the table. Laura was there too, draped in a dove gray suit, legs crossed, lipstick sharp as a blade, and beside her Jason. He looked smaller than I remembered, still handsome, still smug, but less polished now, like something borrowed and never returned. When Ryan stepped fully into the room, cane in hand, the silence snapped. "You're walking," Eric said. "Not perfectly," Ryan replied, "but enough." He didn't sit at the far end. He walked all the way to the head of the table, stood tall, and looked Eric dead in the eyes. "This meeting is now under my authority," he said, voice calm, controlled. "And I'll begin with this." He placed a folder on the table and opened it, page by page, revealing every forged trail, every hidden clause, every piece of proof that tied Eric to a shell company meant to hand control of Hale Nexus Technologies. To Langley Capital. Laura didn't flinch. Jason shifted. Eric's face went pale. "You can't prove intent," Eric muttered. "I don't have to," Ryan said coolly. "I only have to prove breach of fiduciary duty." He tapped the final page, which I just did. The board stirred. The general counsel stood. "Mr. Hale, would you like to call for an immediate vote of no confidence?" "I would," Ryan said, effective immediately. Chaos erupted. Laura rose first, her heels clicking like gunfire. "You don't know who you're messing with, Ryan." "Oh, I do," he said softly. "A woman who hides behind her father's name and a man who sells out everything for a shortcut." She scoffed. "And your nurse? What is she now, your co-founder?" Ryan turned to look at me, and for a moment the whole room seemed to hold its breath. "She's the reason I'm standing here at all," he said. Jason's eyes dropped. The vote was unanimous. Eric was removed. The contracts nullified. Control reverted. The room emptied. Only Ryan and I remained. He leaned on his cane, chest rising hard, but his eyes shone bright. "You did it," I whispered. "No," he said, "we did." And then he smiled, not sharp or mocking, but wide and full and real. In that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe until then. He wasn't the only one who'd taken his first steps that day. Weeks passed. The mansion no longer felt like a mausoleum. Windows stayed open. Light spilled into the halls. Even the garden, once dry and overgrown, began to breathe again. Ryan still had hard days, still limped, still braced against pain. But the bitterness that once followed him like a shadow had started to lift. So had mine. I stopped mourning the wedding that never happened, stopped carrying the name I almost took. I let it go, slowly. I began to see myself as more than just someone who'd been discarded. I started running short laps on the trail behind the house. Reading again, laughing, really laughing, without guilt. Ryan made it a point to cook dinner 1 night a week. Even though he cursed at the stove like it personally wronged him, I let him. I sat at the kitchen island, legs curled up, smiling through the smoke alarm and the mess. It became our ritual. One night, he handed me a dish I couldn't identify, and Saad, if this kills you, I want it on record. You'll get the company in the will, I deadpanned. He paused, serious now. Actually, no. I glanced up. I transferred it to a trust, he said. One that includes you. I blinked. What? I'm not giving you the company, Ryan said gently. But I want you to know I built something better with you than I ever did with anyone else. And I want you to be part of what comes next. I stared at him, my heart thudding. Ryan. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. Before you say anything, he said quickly, you don't have to answer today, or even this year. I know I'm still learning how to be a person again, I said softly, and I know you didn't sign up for this. He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, one tiny sapphire gleaming at its center. But I'd like to ask anyway, he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. Will you consider walking this road with me? Not because I need saving, his eyes found mine, but because with you, I remember who I am. I didn't cry, I thought I might. Instead, I felt something else, something steady, a sense of arrival, as if I'd walked through the darkest part of the forest and found not a castle, but a clearing, a quiet, safe place to breathe again. I took the ring and slid it onto my finger. I'm not saying yes, I whispered, smiling. But I'm not saying no, he laughed softly. That sounds exactly like you. We didn't rush. There were no headlines, no grand announcements, just mornings that began earlier, progress that came one step at a time. He walked half a mile on his own. The next month, I passed my certification exam and opened my own private practice. We hired more staff. I stayed in the house, but it no longer felt like his. It felt like ours. Jason texted once. 2 short lines asking if I was okay. I never replied. I didn't need to, because the truth was, I'd already gotten everything I was supposed to from that heartbreak lesson. A detour and a doorway into a life I'd never even dared to imagine. By fall, Ryan no longer used the chair at all. For his birthday, we drove to the coast, just the two of us. We walked the shoreline at sunset, sand sticking to our feet, the wind sharp enough to sting. At one point, he stared out over the ocean and asked, quietly, you think we'll ever go back to who we were before? I shook my head. I hope not. He turned toward me and I added, because who we became is better. He didn't answer. He just reached for my hand and didn't let go.